Social media is abuzz with debate on the violence currently spreading through the province of KwaZulu-Natal, sparked by the imprisonment of Zuma. Scores of trucks, of course, have been burnt at the Moy River toll plaza on the N3, with incidents recorded in Mpangeni, Mtubatuba and Escourt. And supporters of Zuma have been calling for his release under the banner of hashtag #ShutDownKZN and hashtag #FreeJacobZuma. His daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, has been prominent, loading the situation in Moy River and seeming to rally supporters in the provinces of Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Free State. And some on Twitter have even called for her to be reported for using her account to incite violence. Social media analyst Nelisa Ngulana joins us now for more. Nelisa, a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to the Globe.
Thank you. Good evening, Simpiria, and to the viewers.
First of all, just how instrumental is social media in either growing the phenomenon of the unrest or stemming it out?
But I think, like with any technology or digital platforms, social media platforms have their pros and cons. And one of those pros is that they give immediate access to be able to spread information quickly. So in a situation of where there's unrest, people can easily get messages and information out quickly. So social media can help in that way to spread information quickly.
And we see so many people mobilizing through social media spectrums. Do you think the platform owners themselves do enough, to sort of make sure that their mediums are used adequately?
I think so. I think they're trying. All these platforms have, terms of usage in terms of, how people can use their accounts responsibly. They have penalties. We know this very well on Twitter. You can report an account. If an account is found to be used inadequately or inappropriately, it can be suspended. Facebook, you can also do that. Even on WhatsApp, you can report, numbers as spam or block those numbers. Some of these platforms have also started being involved in fact-checking and journalism initiatives to help media houses and journalists with tools to kind of combat fake news.
And there's also a thin line between fueling civil unrest and freedom of speech, wherein we talk about social media. So where do you draw the line, Nelisa?
But I think the line is clear. Freedom of speech is a protected right in South Africa. So is the right to protest. But, we're also clear in terms of how far those rights extend. While through social media, people can obviously use those platforms to express themselves, their dissatisfaction, especially when they feel like they're not being heard or acknowledged. But also at the same time, just because we have that right and we have the platform, it does not mean that we can abuse it and misuse it and kind of skirt on the line around, what's legal and what's not.
And how much of a role does social media play in the actions of protesters, just for the sake of posting material to seek popularity?
And I think like like I just said now, with the freedom of expression and sharing information, sometimes, some protesters may take actions that may be illegal and sharing those on social media. It is at that point that they are obviously skirting the illegal and they can be liable for criminal offenses.
Yeah, and again, I ask this question, where do we draw the line in terms of the legality of the content that is posted on social media? Say, for instance, we are advocating for a particular cause and we mobilize people for that cause on social media, which some authorities may deem unlawful or breaking the law. So where do we draw the line in terms of the legality of the content that's posted?
So, for example, in the South African environment, specifically now under the Disaster Management Act, where all the lockdown rules come from, there's a very clear clause there that talks about distributing false information about the COVID pandemic, for example, in South Africa. So if you purposefully mislead people on social media, because we've seen so many false statements, untrue things about the virus or the vaccine, doing that, whether you're the creator or not, just by sharing that information, you can be liable. So that is a criminal offense in South Africa where you do that. Another similar example would be, people sharing private, images or videos taken, in intimate situations. When you put that out, that's also an illegal action. So people need to be careful around what they share online, because it doesn't matter. You can be, even if you're not the creator, if you are a distributor, you are also liable.
Yeah, no doubt that misinformation, disinformation and fake news is now a cancer that is eroding the very fabric of our society, as some authorities have been saying. But in terms of advocating for a particular cause, say, for instance, we're calling for, the delivery of pertinent services and we mobilize people on social media. So would that be deemed as illegal or inciting violence?
No, absolutely. Using the platform as a tool for information, using the platform as a tool for mobilization, there's nothing wrong with that. In the same way that government officials, we've seen different accounts, the presidency, very active. They use social media platforms as well to share information. So using the platforms to share credible facts is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Where it becomes wrong is when people share information that's deliberately inaccurate, where people distort videos and images just to incite, a violent or to kind of inflame situations unnecessarily. That's when it becomes a concern.
And in terms of leaking information or leaking data or leaking, pictures, we've seen a couple of days ago an official at the Escort Correctional Services leaking pictures, ostensibly and purportedly, of former President Jacob Zuma when he was being incarcerated. So in terms of litigation, what's the route to take when it comes to such instances?
So obviously, one of the things that one can do is obviously using the platform rules where that information would be leaked by reporting it immediately, or obviously going the legal route where the poster is asked by your legal representative to remove the offending material. If not, there is a route to obviously take with our courts.
Okay, and we've seen on social media in so many countries being blocked by certain governments during social unrest. For instance, the hashtag #EndSARS in Nigeria, and more recently, the Eswatini protest and the pro-democracy protest in Eswatini, and the government's cracking down on social media platforms as detrimental to free speech. What do you make of that?
Yes, absolutely. I think in situations where people have reached a deadlock with their governments, social media platforms can be a great way to share with the world in order to gain solidarity with other citizens of the world and share information. It also helps citizens to give their own perspective. As we've seen with the Eswatini protests, the government and the formal communication from the royal family has been contrary to what we've seen on the ground. So you can just imagine if Eswatini citizens did not have access to social media, which narrative we would be fed around what is happening in the country. So it's important that people have access to these platforms in order for them to give their own perspectives of what is happening on the ground.
And in countries in particular where freedom of speech is not allowed, so can they use a social media platform to sort of, use it as a hideaway to express their thoughts or their views, with the assumption that social media was not incorporated in the Constitution in the first place?
Yes, I mean, we've seen it happen. We see in other countries, I mean, in South Africa, because of our constitution, people can pretty much say whatever they want to say without fear of, retribution, because our laws are not repressive. But in other countries, people will get arrested, people will get detained. There are situations as well where these platforms are getting banned or being fined for operating in those areas. So it is a concern. It is something that we need to watch out for.
All right, Nelisa, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your analysis.